So now we're starting chapter 16, which is all about the endocrine system. Some things we're going to think about as we go through this chapter. We're going to look at what is the endocrine system as a whole. We're going to define exocrine and endocrine and discuss what that means for glands. We're going to look at both steroid and peptide hormones. And then we'll go into each of the major glands and their function within the endocrine system. We'll look at type 2 and type 1 diabetes and how type 2 can be prevented. And then, of course, we'll look at how the endocrine as well as how the nervous system works together to help maintain homeostasis throughout the body. When we're looking at the endocrine system, we're looking at glands. These are organs that are going to secrete hormones or chemical messengers that are going to travel through the bloodstream to various body parts. The parts of the body that they're targeting are called target cells, target tissues, or target organs. Now, it's important to note that while this is a major way of communicating within the body, it is a slower process, but has the advantage of having a much more prolonged response. Compare this to the nervous system, which had a very fast response, but it was not sustained for very long. Here's an overview of the different organs we'll be looking at. We have the hypothalamus up here in green, the pituitary gland, which will split into two parts, the anterior and posterior pituitaries, the thyroid, and behind the thyroid are the parathyroids, the thymus, the adrenal glands, the pancreas, and the gonads, which would be testes in males and ovaries in females. Let's define a few terms: exocrine and endocrine. Exocrine glands are going to secrete a product into a duct in order to carry that product to somewhere else in the body. Endocrine glands also secrete a product, however, they secrete their product into the bloodstream. So if we compare and contrast the two, both exocrine and endocrine glands are going to secrete their products into something, but exocrine is going to use a duct and endocrine is going to use the bloodstream. We mentioned hormones before and how they're a chemical signal. These are signals that are going to help provide communication between cells, body parts, and even individuals. Something like a pheromone is a signal that is sent, chemically speaking, sent from one individual to another. The target cell is the cell that's going to receive the message and is going to respond to the chemical signal. Not every cell is a hormone's target cell. Here we see various cells. We have this hormone here that has a very particular shape. The target cells here have receptors that match and bind with the hormone, but the non-target cells' receptors don't, and so the hormone doesn't bind, and so this cell here, this non-target cell, will not do anything in response to the hormone. It basically can't hear or understand what the hormone's trying to say. Now there are a few types of hormones out there. Let's look at a few classes of these. Prostaglandins are local hormones, meaning that these don't actually get into the bloodstream. They're going to stay within a neighborhood. Think of like if you were to put some flyers around your neighborhoods on their doors. Pheromones are chemical signals that are going to influence other individuals. This is a chemical signal that would be released to be detected by another person. And now we get into two different classes on how they function: peptide hormones and steroid hormones. Peptide hormones are hormones that are going to consist of amino acids or polypeptides or proteins. Because of their structure, they bind to a receptor in the plasma membrane of the target cell, and that's going to cause an effect on the inside of the target cell. Steroid hormones are lipid-based. Because they're lipid-based, they can enter into a cell, bypassing the plasma membrane, and directly cause change inside the cell. Let's take a look at how both of these work. Here's our peptide hormone. Because it's a peptide-based hormone, it cannot get through the plasma membrane. It's stuck on the outside. So in order to enact a change in our cell, this hormone is going to bind with a receptor that's been embedded in the plasma membrane. This receptor will then trigger certain changes inside our cell in order to cause some sort of cascade or some sort of effect downstream. But if we notice, our hormone here never actually goes inside. It simply activates this receptor protein and makes it activate things going on inside of our cell. The steroid hormone, though, because of its structure, is lipid soluble and is able to bypass the plasma membrane without much assistance. There are no receptors embedded in the membrane for steroid hormones. Instead, we see this steroid hormone pass directly into the cell. It's going to bind with the receptor deep in the cell itself, and then it's going to directly influence DNA, meaning it's going to directly influence whether or not a gene is used or not. This is how the steroid hormone enacts change inside the cell.